Welcome to another How to Succeed podcast, the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. I'm your host, Mike Montague with Sandler, and my guest this week is Stephanie Paul. She is an author and a speaker coach, and she is going to help us uncover how to unlock the magic of story to influence and engage any audience. I'm excited to hear more about that. The following podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems Inc. and protected by U.S. copyright laws. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. You can find more information at sandler.com. As for Stephanie, you can find her at stephaniepaulinc.com. We also have a special gift. If you put /powerful gift at the end, you can get a Cliff Notes version of the book. She is author of Unlock the Magic of Story, How to Use Neuroscience Secrets to Engage and Influence Any Audience. We're talking about that next. Here we go. Stephanie, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a little bit about the magic of story and what we're talking about today.
A little bit. I could tell you a lot about the magic.
We'll get there.
Basically story is so incredibly important because it's pre-wired into our brains. So before we even had language and communication, which is our prefrontal or our neocortex part of the brain, we communicated through nonverbals and, cave drawings and things like that. So it's been there a lot longer than we've had language. And that's why it's so incredibly important to tickle that part of the brain. As far as story goes, it's a magical thing when we actually do it well. Most people approach story with a list of facts, and that's not story. So story really is a message that's delivered that emotionally moves us in some capacity.
I love that. And we should probably hit off the back a little bit of your credibility so you don't have to brag about yourself. You coach executives, sales teams, TEDx speakers, fundraisers, and other experts on how to become better storytellers and presenters. People can find you at stephaniepaulinc.com. But what I thought is interesting, you've done a ton of presenting yourself, is that TEDx sort of talk. You've helped over 30 presenters craft those really compelling, concise stories, but also about being a better presenter. So in all of that work, is there a common myth, misconception, or just common problem that people run into when they try to tell a story or become a better presenter?
It's really interesting. My favorite TED talk is a TEDx. It's a New York TEDx, and I cannot remember the title of it, but what the guy does is brilliant. He actually takes the TED format and the way people are trained to deliver their presentation, and he says absolutely nothing. And he literally says, "Hi, I'm going to do a TED talk and I'm going to say absolutely nothing." And he does all the non-verbals, and he does, he puts his glasses on his nose and he takes his glasses off, and he says data, fact. And he does a brilliant job, and it's hilarious, but he actually says absolutely nothing. And so that in itself is a wonderful way to show the communication and the connection of the non-verbals is there, because he's entertaining and he creates a great story of saying absolutely nothing. But the verbiage, the vocal part, the words are missing. Does that make sense?
So yeah, I love it. I've seen that one actually. And what I think is interesting is it shows you the power of that TED Talk format and the storytelling without actually any substance. And I feel like salespeople and maybe leaders too usually have the opposite problem of that. They work really hard on their scripts and the word and the language, and they have all of the data and the logical reasons of why somebody should buy or change their behavior, but they forget all of that other stuff that he was highlighting: your tone, your posture, your body language, to really communicate and tell a good story. The other one I really love, have you seen the humor one, the guy that tells a story about his sister falling off the bunk beds, and he really demonstrates the power of humor and playfulness in a way that's fun and playful. He's telling you an impactful story that's funny and making you laugh to demonstrate the point and show you, rather than to just tell you about boring facts about humor. And I think when you see those contradictions, that's when you can really kind of understand the working parts behind a great story, right?
Yeah, I actually just finished a training that I was asked to create for the Growth Institute, which is an online training format for, there's got all kinds of leadership people in there and authors and stuff like that. There's some really great content, but they wanted me to do a training based on my book. It's just over an hour long. And one of the things that I wrote in the training that isn't actually in the book is I was talking about the parts of our brain. So when we create messages, right, we create messages with our neocortex, which is this part of the brain, which is only about 200,000 years old. And if you're listening to the Audible, you can't see me pointing to this brain, but there is a brain in the book, and I explain it in the book. So so the neocortex is where language, logic, and reason is. And all messages have to come up through the reptilian brain first, and then go, which is fight, flight, or freeze, and then go into the mammalian brain, or the limbic or the amygdala system, where we have emotional memory stored, and where we read tone of voice, we read non-verbals in this part of our brain. So that's where play and things like that is incredibly important. There's been research and studies done around animals. When they play, they pant like, and there's a lot of researchers that believe that is their form of laughter, right? So when they're having play and they're having fun, the way they pant is a form of laughter. And so laughter is actually the most contagious behavior we have, i.e. humor. It fires off the most mirror neurons in our brain when we do it. And we don't need to know anything about jokes or even a format of humor to laugh. You will, if you walk past a room of people who are all laughing tremendously loud, large groups of people, you will automatically start a bit of a giggle and be like, oh, what are they laughing at? I have no idea, but you laugh because it's so contagious. And interestingly enough, I've got a new kitten, a Bengal kitten. He's like 5 months old. We've had him for a couple of months, and he likes to play peekaboo. And he will instigate peekaboo with me. He'll pop out around the corner and then come back and then pop around the corner and see if and then sneak up a little bit more on me. And if you look at babies, they love peekaboo, and it makes them giggle. When, we start actually laughing at about 2 months of age. So just those aspects of, the mammalian brain with my kitten, and like babies and peekaboo, and the fact that we start laughing for no reason at the age of 2 months, babies start giggling, and they we don't know why, but it all stems from the limbic system. And that's why humor is so incredibly important, because it'll bond you faster than anything else. Now, does that mean we all have to become stand-up comedians? No. I firmly believe, and I explain it, and I think it's chapter number 5 in the book where I talk about humor, is that you are the funniest person you know. And the reason why I know this is because we've made ourselves laugh, we've made our friends and family laugh, we've made colleagues laugh over the most mundane, basic observations or commonalities. And it doesn't have to be an outrageous, joke set up or anything like that what we laugh at.
I think that's extremely powerful. And I love that. That's definitely where I come from. And even David Sandler himself said you connect on a sales call with guts and humor. You have to have the guts to be authentic, the guts to say things and ask questions that other people wouldn't have. And you do that in a humorous style, allows people to relax, lower their defensive walls, and be open to these messages. And that's what I'm hearing you say there. I want to circle back one more time before we leave attitude, though, and ask you about the ideal attitude for creating a story or for telling the story, because I feel like sometimes there's this weird paradox almost where you're like, if I'm trying to be funny, it's really hard. But if I'm just being myself, funny things happen. Or if I try to come up with a story, it's hard to think of one. But we do this naturally so much as human beings that I'm wondering what the ideal attitude is for really matching your story and the content and your audience all together.
Yeah, I think people create their messages backwards. They start with their slide deck or their content or their data or their facts or their whatever. And at the end of the day, that is the least important thing. So I actually wrote an article for the Life Sciences Leader about pitching. because I often work with a lot of people who pitch to raise money for startups and things like that. And, they spend an inordinate amount of time on the slides and the facts and the science and what are we going to put in there? And at the end of the day, that to me is your jewelry. It's what you put on. It's the last thing you should put on. Yes, it's got to support you. It's got to make you look good, and it's got to be shiny like diamonds, so that everybody is attracted to it. But at the end of the day, people buy in through their biology. They buy into you by what you say and how you say it. And if you're not passionate about what it is that you're selling, then why should they be interested? If you're not having fun, why should they come in and buy into that thing? When people get up and they present, they go, "Hi, I'm really excited to be here today, and we've got this amazing new product that we're going to show you, and it's going to revolutionize the world." What did that just do to your limbic system? It put you to sleep, right? But if somebody showed up and said, "Oh my God, I've got the most amazing idea. I'm really excited about this. Just give me a second. I'll get to it." But then your brain's starting to go like, yeah, shut up. Just tell me what it is. You're already getting the buy-in because I am presenting because I'm excited about it. I'm having fun with it. I can't even get it out of my mouth fast enough because I'm so passionate and excited about it. Now, do we all want to be like that as salespeople? Maybe not. Judge your audience, read the room. I'm certified in, 5 assessments that I use, one of them being DISC, which I believe you guys use at Sandler too, which is that, is it a dominant this is observable behavior in DISC. Observe your audience, read the behavior, see how they're shown up, make a comment on them, because at the end of the day, it's all about them, and it's really important that we have, I think of it like a communication tango. If you've ever seen the tango, it's one of the most beautiful exchanges of energy between professional dancers. They sort of give and take, and that's how communication should be, regardless of what the message is that you don't just listen with your ears, you listen with your whole body. You listen and read the behavior. We have over 4,000 human behaviors, and some of them are micro expressions, and your limbic system reads that stuff perfectly well. Your neocortex might not interpret it correctly, but your limbic system will, and that's why you get a gut feeling. And if you're not listening to your audience or the person, for you guys, sales, if you're not listening to the person who's buying and really reading their behavior, truly understanding them, you're not going to be able to deliver the message that they're going to want to hear. Because you've got to read their body language. So it's so important, going back to that, we create the message with our neocortex, language, logic, and reason, but it has to go through those 2 brains first. So the other person has to feel good about it, because when we make a decision, we cannot do it without going back to our limbic system and saying, how do you feel about that? There is science behind it. Antonio Damasio is a famous researcher. He's most known for his work with consciousness and subconsciousness. But when he was doing a research project, I talk about it in the book, he was working with patients who had damage to the brain where emotions are created. And he discovered that they could speak logically and reasonably about decision-making, but when asked to make even the simplest of choice, they could not do it, because they couldn't go back to the limbic system and say, how do I feel about that? That's about the simplest way I can explain it. But this happens super fast. It happens super fast. So if your biology is not present and in the mode that you want it to be in, you just simply won't be able to get the results with the communication, whatever that is that you want.
I love that. And I want to highlight a few things here. The first one is, I love trusting your gut. I've been a performer for a long time. And I think if you are feeling like you're bored or the audience is bored, you're probably right. It's best to call a timeout, tell a story, change the energy, do something to shake things up. If you're feeling somebody else is engaged, they're into it, they're making eye contact, they're smiling, they're nodding along, then you probably have a good connection with them, and it's not really that hard. But I do want to circle back to what you mentioned about our personal presence and how we're coming, because I think those are some easy things that people can identify, at least with other people, and then maybe with themselves, and things they could change. Could you highlight a few things that cause us to lose power or credibility or people's attention and make them bored? You demonstrated them great for us. And then what are some maybe specific things that attract people to a story that make them resonate and connect?
There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do, but at the end of the day, it's how you show up. So the more you learn about self and understand your own communication style, your own behavior, your own habits, self-leadership, essentially, the better you will understand and be able to lead and, understand the behavior of others. And one of the things that I tell my clients to do is when they're learning story is practice reading out loud and using the tone of your voice. And no matter how silly it feels, the better you are at delivery. Like if the opening of this presentation, you had your radio voice on and you were like, hey, everybody, we're about to do the Sandler show. You went into that character or that voice. And that's incredibly important. So I say to people, practice reading out loud. It doesn't matter whether it's a newspaper, the electric bill, the whatever it is, practice reading tone of voice and storytelling through your voice, because it's a huge component of our nonverbals, right? So if I was to say, I like chocolate, especially when it's frozen over ice cream, not as interesting as, oh my God, I like chocolate, especially when it's frozen over ice cream. It's delicious. Different way of delivering. So I did it earlier with that presentation piece. So that's one thing to do, is practice your tone of voice. And who cares? Get Italian with your movements. I say that because Italian people tend to be very passionate about the way they move. Hands are incredibly important so that people can see, people say to me, what do I do with my hands? And I'm like, I don't care. As long as it's authentic, I don't care. We sort of went into this, I don't know who came up with the idea that we have to be stoic and we have to be serious and all that kind of BS, because it's just not true. There's so much research around when we are authentic, when we are transparent, when we are sincere, and when we are humorous, we are the most engaging people that we can possibly be. So it's terrifying for people to think, if I'm going to be vulnerable here. But at the end of the day, that's where you connect. If you've ever heard of Brene Brown, or you haven't heard of Brene Brown, go re-watch her video, The Power of Vulnerability, the TED talk that she did several years ago that's got 50 million shot, people watching it. She talks about her research, 2 decades of research, where, she realizes that we connect through vulnerability. We connect through our messes, not our successes. So unless you're sincere and transparent and realistic, it's harder to connect with other people. So being stoic, and, people often go to get in front of a camera and they're like, all right, okay, now I'm in front of a camera. It's time for me to speak. And that's not true as to how we connect. Like when I do my video training stuff, my mantra before I open my mouth is joyous, focused, and relaxed. I'm going to be joyous, focused, and relaxed, joyous, focused, and relaxed, right? So I get into this mode where I'm literally just wanting to deliver joy and I'm having fun while I'm doing it. And if I make mistakes, I keep them. If I flub over a word, I'm like, oh gosh, try to say that 3 times fast or something like that. I keep my mistakes in my training videos because it shows my authenticity. It shows my vulnerability and it shows my sincerity that that's not important. What I'm teaching you is important. The mistake that I made, I don't care. I mean, this is a real big one and it just doesn't make any sense. Then we might go back and cut it out. But most of the time, I show my sincerity. I talk about, when we learn and we have mentors, we don't want to hear about our mentors' successes. We want to hear about their mistakes. What went wrong? How did they get through that? And I think we forget that that's where we truly connect with each other. So practice being vulnerable, practice being sincere, and not to the point where you tell a story that it's like, oh, that was kind of uncomfortable. More information than I needed. The more aware we become and the better we become at reading other people's behavior, and the better we will be at connecting. It's just the way it is. So whatever work you can do to become a better listener, to become a better connector, to become more aware of others' behaviors. There's so many books out there. Joe Navarro, amazing, ex-FBI guy. He's got like a bunch of books, which are fantastic. Christopher Haddagney, another human behavior specialist. He's got a bunch of books on Amazon. I'm happy to share them with you. If you don't like reading books, get Audible, but they both have trainings, but in human behavior and things like that. but those kind of things are key and really important to learn. And then practice storytelling just on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be once upon a time there was a prince and a princess and a car. I mean, it's a story is as simple as I tripped over and oh God, hurt my toe this morning. That's it. But because I put emphasis in, on the emotional aspect of it, maybe your limbic system went, oh yeah, I did that the other day, and connected to that. So at the end of the day, to me, it's just get passionate, embrace whatever it is, your imperfections. I have a client, she's like, I have a crooked smile. I'm like, great, keep it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what makes you easy to connect to, is your crooked smile. If you were perfect, we like looking at pretty things, but we have these weird beliefs that we're not good enough deep down inside. I've got CEOs that tell me all the time, I've got imposter syndrome. I shouldn't be here. We all have that little voice. Start practicing getting rid of it. Every time that little voice, crawls into your head and says, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I feel stupid. When I started learning stand up and doing improv, I had a tremendous imposter syndrome, is that I couldn't be funny, right? And that voice would come in all the time, and it would really squash me from doing really good work. And it took me a while to get rid of it. But getting rid of that voice is super key to having the courage to step forward and be seen, because our uniqueness and our individualism and our personal stories that we think are boring is what is interesting to other people.
I want to ask you about those stories a little bit in the content. We talked a little bit about that process, but can you help us out here with some techniques for putting together a presentation? Maybe it's a public presentation or a formal sales pitch, or maybe even informal, but you want to hit some benchmarks. You want to have some stories ready. You want to make sure it emotionally connects. But I feel like a lot of people struggle with not knowing where to start, or like you said, starting at the wrong end of things. Do you have any tips, tricks, or hacks for how we identify the most appropriate stories and which ones should make the cut and which ones shouldn't?
Well, obviously, I tell people, sorry, I started another thought there. I started one thought and then moved over to another thought. I tell people to collect their stories, especially if like you're a sales team or something like that. Collect the wins, collect the losses, collect the stories, and write them out and have them edited, make them succinct, and then share them with people so that they can use them. And the more those stories are told, the easier they are to remember. The more emotional they are, the easier they are to remember. So we make our decisions based on what we remember, not on what we forget, right? And so when we elicit emotions, we can remember those things better. And so you want to, any kind of presentation, there's no research that proves that we remember, say we're going to talk for 30 minutes on this podcast, and, there might be 3 key things that stand out to your audience, and those are the things that they remember. And maybe it was me talking about ice cream because I changed my voice in a delicious way. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But whatever those key things are that you really want to hit home, those are the things that need to be wrapped in story. Those are the key things that you want people to remember. So those are the key things that they're going to take away when they go to make a decision that they will remember. So how do you repeat those things? And how do you repeat those things in a visual, enticing, and emotional way so that people can use them when they go back to make the decision, and how they pull out that memory. So memories that are wrapped in super salacious or enticing or emotional content or delivery come out straight away, versus things that are ambiguous. Like if I say an ambiguous word, you're less likely to remember it because it's kind of, there's nothing where, if I say a circle, you see a circle. If I say an apple, you see an apple, right? So those are very clear things. So whatever you want someone to remember, make sure that you wrap it in something emotional, and you don't need, especially when you're speaking, and you can't have visuals, like you don't have a slide deck or something like that. then you really have to speak the visuals, and you have to deliver the emotion. Otherwise it gets lost, like the example I did at the beginning where I had the monotone voice. If you're creating a slide deck to go with a presentation, then make sure the visuals are strong and truly support the emotional stuff. Like, obviously, if you've got to have some data and some science and some facts on your slides, then that's inevitable. But then when you get into the story stuff, make sure you have really strong emotional supportive images that go with the story stuff. So
like that.
Yeah.
And I just add to it, I think that's what helps me the most. I have to put together a lot of presentations and courses and speeches, or even a podcast like this. We've done over 500 episodes with basically 3 benchmarks we want to hit: attitude, behavior, and technique. So if we hit something interesting in each one of those buckets, we're good to go. And I think the other thing that helps me is your opening and closing. So if you start with something interesting and you close with something interesting, most of the time, that's what people will remember. Hopefully they remember 1 or 3 of your points in between there. But I think it also helps me as a presenter. When I nail the opening and I nail the closing, I feel good about it going into it. And if I have those juicy stories or exercises or thoughtful questions or audience interaction on those 3 key points, and I make those few things really good, then the rest of it, I found you just kind of fill in. You read the room, you can adjust for the audience, and you can feel real prepared about that. Anything else we missed that you want to hit? The book is Unlock the Magic of Story: How to Use Neuroscience Secrets to Engage and Influence Any Audience. Stephanie Paul is the author. You can find her at stephaniepaulinc.com. And if you want the cliff notes of the book, hit /powerful gift, and you can get a free white paper version of the book there as well. Anything we missed?
If your presence doesn't make an impact, then your absence won't make a difference. You asked me what my favorite quote was before we pressed record. And just as you mentioned, the opening and the closing is really important. I like to often open with that statement or that quote: if your presence doesn't make an impact, then your absence won't make a difference. And a good opener is something visual or emotional that makes people sit up and listen and want to know what goes next. So, TED Talks we mentioned earlier often open with things like, imagine this, visualize that, and those things are really great because our brains are pre-wired for that kind of story, and they want to buy in, and we want to see our own vision of whatever that is, because at the end of the day, the audience, it's all about them, right? What's in it for them? Fear of missing out. And then, like you said, the closing is really important because you have to think about that call to action. Now, is it a call to a sale? Maybe not. Is it just leaving somebody with a question in their mind to answer? Whatever that is, but it has to be just as enticing and visual and emotional as the opening. So that would be my 2 cents on there. And yeah, like I said, please go to my website and download my free powerful gift, because it is sort of the cliff notes on the book, and it will give you some tips definitely for free.
I love it. Now, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. You've done a ton of cool stuff. I mentioned at the top, coaching people, TED Talks. You've been in international TV and film appearances. At this point in your career, how do you define success?
I define success through joy. If you are joyful and you're happy, and I have a statement that I say, and it's today is a good day to have a good day. And I have that sign right by my front door as I'm walking out the door to remind me, that that's important. And even on the days when I wake up and I'm like, oh God, I feel awful, whatever it is, you've got the flu, who knows? That's the first thing that goes into my head as soon as I'm feeling negative, is today is a good day to have a good day. And I think if we are joyful and we're in service to others and we're paying it forward, that always makes me feel good. And so I think I define my success by enlightening myself and being a better human. That's, you can't put money to that, and materialistic. Well, you can't take materialistic stuff with you when you go, and you can't take money with you when you go. So why not enjoy yourself while you're here with whatever life throws at you? Even when I get the bad stuff thrown at me, I always stop in my tracks. As soon as I feel the negative energy coming up, I'm like, I'm like, no. how can I switch this? Because we have the choice to change our emotions, because emotions are just chemicals, and we can actually shift our biology very easily when we're mindful of that capacity.
So last question here before we wrap up, and we'll get 3 quick takeaways. But was there a failure, lesson learned, or something you had to get over, roadblock, hurdle, in order to be successful in your career? Does anything stand out as maybe a failure you're most proud of, or a moment that you had to get over?
I don't know. Can I say my first marriage?
Sure. Lots of lessons learned there, I'm sure.
I totally failed at that, but that was when I started my business. I wanted out of a superficial marriage in a superficial industry, which was Hollywood, and I moved to Orange County, to San Clemente at the beach, and figured, I was like, well, I guess got to invent the wheel again. And I think there was a lot of mistakes when I started my training and coaching business. First 2 years, I'm going to do it all by myself, and that kind of sucked. So I think going through that hard emotional place and starting a coaching business. And I remember calling friends, who had coaching or training businesses that were way ahead of, from where I was, crying on the phone, going, this is really hard. And, they'd just be like, keep going. The first 2 or 3 years is hard, but if you can, keep going and build your income and build your clients and all that kind of stuff. And I got certified, and, I targeted more of a niche market and things like that. And I think that was probably one of the hardest lessons, I learned, was coming out of that space and creating something that didn't exist.
I love that. All right, let's wrap it up for everybody. Based on how to succeed at unlocking the magic of story, what is one attitude you'd like people to have?
I'm curious. To always be curious. I have an acronym that I use with my clients, and I call it driving the car, CAAR. And C stands for curious. First, you need to be curious, right, of what it is you need to shift or change or learn or understand, because we don't know what we don't know, even though we think we know everything. And and the next A stands for awareness. First you become curious, and then you can be more aware of what it is that you want to learn, understand, change, shift, or whatever that behavior is. And then the second A stands for authenticity. So once you become curious and aware, you might have to practice some learned new things or whatever, some behaviors that feel inauthentic. Oh, that doesn't feel like me, or that it's uncomfortable to put that attitude or that habit on right now. But the more you practice it, the more authentic it becomes. And eventually it's just like driving a car, right? So you're just moving with, it's like learning how to ride a bicycle. Eventually with story, the more you practice it, you get your balance, and then you're off, and you never forget that balance. And then the last R stands for real value. You have to place real value on the process, or you're going to go nowhere. And one thing that people don't often know or understand is that, going back to that disc, that observable behavior, is our behaviors are driven by our values, whether we know our values or not. So that R stands for, not only do you have to put real value on the process, you have to really understand what your values are and how they drive you and your behavior.
I love that. And that might be a great behavior here, but one thing you would like people to do leaving the podcast?
Just be nicer to each other. I know that sounds really hippy dippy and whatever,
yourself.
but when you're your authentic self and you're trying your best to be your best, you bring out the best in others. Just like when we smile at each other, I was doing a training for about 300 CEOs, and the guy who asked me to come and speak asked me to talk on scripting and why scripting was so important. Now, memorizing the script and doing it by rote, no, we discussed that at the top. That's just no. But I explained why scripting was important. And one of the questions that came to me was, well, how do you connect without speaking to an audience? And I had about 300 people sitting in front of me. And I said, okay, watch this. And I literally made eye contact with as many people as I could, with the biggest, cheesiest smile on my face. And just like I am now, not if you're listening to Audible, you can't see it, but maybe you can hear it. And I made this eye contact, and within about 30 seconds, I had half the room laughing and smiling back at me. And that's what I'm saying, is just do that. Smile more. Be good to yourself. Be good to others. Even when you get mad, that's it's good to have those emotions, but we can shift those emotions and we can approach them in different ways. And if we were just nicer to each other, I think the world would just be a nicer place to be in, to be honest.
And last one, any technique, tool, or hack you would recommend people use?
Okay, this is one of my favorite hacks, and I actually use it myself. So when we smile, we release serotonin, and serotonin makes us feel good and it shifts our energy, right? When we laugh, we actually release 11 hormones, and I talk about that in the book, but you can, there's 2 hacks I'm going to give you. One is you can take a pencil when you're in a bad mood, and I've done this, and you can stick it in your teeth, and it forces your mouth to smile. If you hold that pencil in your teeth for at least 20 to 30 seconds, you will begin to release serotonin. So that's a biohack, and it'll actually help you shift your mood. I do it just by forcing the smile on my face, and then I usually end up laughing at myself because I feel like an idiot. And what was the other biohack? The other biohack is if you're not having a good day and you want to shift your energy and dramatically, and you can do this with a colleague or a friend, or you could even do it with an animal. But when we hug each other, we also release serotonin and oxytocin. But if you get a partner who's willing to do this with you, it feels a little crazy, but it works tremendously. Is you hug each other and you set a timer for about 60 seconds, that's all you really need, and you start laughing. So if you hug each other and you're laughing while you're hugging each other, you will feel euphoric at the end of that 60 seconds. I promise you.
I love it. That is great stuff. Again, we're talking with Stephanie Paul. You can find her at stephaniepaulinc.com/powerful gift for the cliff notes of the book, Unlock the Magic of Story. You can find that anywhere books are sold, I'm sure, or go to the website to check it out. For any more information on Sandler, you can go to sandler.com. We have a ton of free resources there. And as always, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening or watching it right now. Share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it. That always helps us out a ton. And thank you for listening. Remember, whatever you are, be a good one. The How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training with over 200 locations. For more information, visit sandler.com. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to click subscribe to get notified about future sales and leadership videos from Sandler.
The Sandler Summit returns in 2023. Each new event builds exponentially upon the energy and success of the prior year. The 2022 Sandler Summit event was a huge success for everyone who attended, so don't miss the next one. Buy your tickets to the Sandler Summit at sandler.com/summit.